Hello and welcome to the Tolkien Society. I'm Hawk Robinson, President and Founder. This is our May 11th, 2024 broadcast. Sorry, we're 15 minutes late. Technical issues and then me blabbering about some stuff that going on. Made us a little bit late. Apologize for that. We are here in Spokane, Washington at the RPG Community Center, the RPG Center. Who's donated the use of the space. Please consider donating to it. They really need donations. Donations the last 9 months for a lot of nonprofits have been way down, and really need your donations at rpgresearch.com/donate. Okay, let's go around. So listen, I'm Hawk Robinson off camera. You'll see me come on camera a little bit. Going from the left, rotating, and then we'll go remote.
Hello, my name is Anthony, and I'm of the East farther.
Hi, I'm Joey.
Hi, I'm Brian, the Secretary of the Smile of the Tolkien Society.
And online.
I'm also the Deputy Secretary.
He is, actually.
Yeah, great, excellent. And online.
Yeah, this is Gary Haglin in Mountain Home, Idaho, which if you overlay a map of Middle Earth on it, it's somewhere near Harad, I think, or Harad, or however you pronounce it.
Yes, with lots of sagebrush, right?
Sagebrush and tumbleweeds, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome, Gary.
Welcome. All right, and Kip and the others are out at the Spark Central Community Center volunteering because this month is celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Spokane 1974 World Fair and Expo. And that was why the whole Riverfront Park got built and all of that. It really changed Spokane from the mining lumber town to something entirely different for that event. So it's now the 50th anniversary. So Spark Central, one of the community centers that we run our role-playing game programs at twice a month, asked us to do some extra Saturday special events or whenever we could do it with the theme of a fair expo. So we're running 3 tables instead of the usual 1 or 2 with Doctor Who, Dungeons and Dragons, and No Thank You Evil, but each of them has a story based around a fair or an expo or a carnival or whatever. The D&D one is a fairy carnival. It's the Wild Beyond Witchlight campaign, for those of D&Ders who are familiar with that, which is one of the few new campaigns that's come out in D&D in decades. Like most of the adventures that come out in 3rd and 4th and 5th edition just rehashes of the 1st and 2nd edition D&D campaigns. But Wild Beyond Witchlight is all about fae and fairies, and that is a new thing to, like, a whole campaign dedicated to that. And that's when we've used it with some of our therapeutic clients and such, like some of them on the spectrum who love fairy and such. They found it really accessible for them and such. The other one is No Thank You Evil, and there's some carnival ones, adventures that are available there that we're running. And then Doctor Who Arrow Down, which starts with a coastal, so in England, and Brian can speak to this more, they have those little fairgrounds along the coast and such, with the little donkey rides and stuff like that. So this adventure is set along one of those, and it's an adventure we've been running for years. But something is amiss. People get off the bus for this event, and there's no other people. There's donkeys milling about, and all the carnival stuff's running. But where are the people? And the water looks strange. And the sky looks a little strange. And it starts as like kind of a Scooby-Doo kind of, wow, something's weird here. Then slowly it reveals the sci-fi aspect of it. We've often run it to introduce new people to role-playing games in general because it's a modern setting. And we don't tell them what it is. We don't tell them it's Doctor Who, D&D, whatever. We just say, want to try a role-playing game? Well, I don't really like sci-fi fantasy. Oh, we have the perfect game for you then. Because it starts as normal and it's a mystery, and we can keep it a Scooby-Doo mystery if we want, basically. But if they say they especially don't like D&D or fantasy, this is much more accessible to them. So they get a character sheet that doesn't say Doctor Who or anything on it. They just have a human character, and then things get revealed, and it's worked really well. So those are 3 adventures we're running there during this event. That's for all month on the Saturdays. That's where they can make it. All right. Brian, do you have notes to go over from
I do.
Wonderful.
Absolutely, yep.
If you would be so kind, sir.
Absolutely. Okay, so hello everybody. the notes from April are that we, let's see here, pulling it up. 1 second, please. And then just Hawk, if you will have your talk on trees, Tolkien's love of trees and the environment, because that's
Right.
today. So you need to get that out.
So you want me to like read that paper?
Yes, please. Yep. Or excerpts from it, but it's 7
It's
pages.
not super long.
No, I think it'd be great to hear the whole thing, and I
All
did
right.
include a link to it in ResearchGate on the notes.
Okay, I think it's on the.
Okay, so AIA Tolkien Society met on April the 13th.
Yes.
And those attending were Chris, Gary, Hawk, Anthony, Brian, Kip, and Joey. We started off with an introduction, and then Hawk gave an update on the community center. Many thanks to those who helped to donate over the last few months to help keep it open.
Yeah.
So we're
Otherwise we couldn't be here.
that's right. So we're very thankful for that.
And most of the coffee shops have been killed off, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
pretty hard to find anything to do.
Right. So thankfully we're able to continue. Much thanks to Hawk also for helping to keep it afloat. We welcomed Kip as a first time in person.
All the way from Florida.
Yep, all the way from Florida. And
She
we're
should be here at least till August.
and working with the community center or the LLC. Which one is she working with?
She's working both for RPG Research, the nonprofit, and she's now an employee at RPG Therapeutics LLC.
Very good.
Ninth employee.
Gary read the notes for March 2024, and in that meeting we read Tolkien's letters 225 to 227. We had a discussion on what to do in the future, as we kind of had lost a little bit of steam. We had a wonderful run last year, actually I think a year and a half, right, Anthony, of kind of saying, hey, along with our normal reading through the letters of Tolkien in chronological order, what if we were to go through a number of authors and other writers, first of all, whom Tolkien influenced first, then the peers and kind of the literary ecology or ecosystem that Tolkien was part of, who lived contemporaneously. That's the word.
Contemporarily?
Yeah, contemporaneously. And then last, taking a long look over about a year's worth of influences upon Tolkien, going all the way from ancient writings of both biblical but also mythological sources, taking us all the way through the early and late Middle Ages, and just especially a lot of those sources from which Tolkien was inspired and drew some of his ideas and thoughts, but of course doing it in a unique way. Okay, so because of that, we'd kind of gotten pretty much towards the end of that. I don't think we ever tackled Chaucer, but we did get through the Arthurian kind of romances and so forth, and Tolkien's connection to that. Then we talked about now what do we do for kind of a new focus. So we kind of scoped out the next couple of months. We talked about how the plan in May would be for Hawk to read his paper, Tolkien's Love of Trees and the Environment, which we'll get the privilege to hear from today.
And the link is in the YouTube channel, the RPGSN channel, for the PDF that was read by the Tolkien Society back on Tuesday. So the paper was written in 2007. It was read in front of the Tolkien Society in 2011. This is that revision.
Right. And then we decided that in June we would. So all these are things that we have done in the past. It's been a very long time. So Hawk's going to read about his paper on Tolkien and the environment. June will be comparing the Kalevala, the Finnish epic, the Kalevala, and Tolkien's character of Turin Turambar, most easily found in the chapter of the Silmarillion. But if you want a deeper dive, read the Children of Húrin. July will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, and there will be a presentation by William Hawks Robinson, actually. Presentation on the history of role-playing games with a special focus on Middle-earth RPGs, and a mini-boot potentially. So, yep. And of course, I'm referring to you saying can't be that you can't share that, but we know that that's your life's passion, and
Yes.
you have the most knowledge base.
Yeah, I can do that off the top of my head.
Yeah, and you might even have a slideshow that you might throw
Well,
on.
and the video experts, maybe even from John Durant,
Yeah.
who I've taught.
Yeah, it'd be great to-
because he did that whole history from his
Right.
insider.
So
perspective, which is
we'll
very
get lots of good thoughts on celebrating the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons. Gary referred to the annual meeting of the Tolkien Society actually going on in April, I believe. Chris shared a lot of news in the musical realm. The first official Lord of the Rings musical is coming to Chicago. The Godfrey version of the Silmarillion, which I believe is an opera, it has been completed, and that's 4 nights. LoneRing.net mentioned on April 8 news about an opera in Wales, so that's a separate piece, the Lord of the Rings opera. I think that's different. And then we had a little revisiting of Peter Jackson referencing the Beatles, and when they wanted to make a movie based on Lord of the Rings, and how that mercifully got shot down. I think there was something on there about was it Ringo Starr? Somebody had said they wanted to. There was some kind of weird plot twist with sleeping with Galadriel. I don't really know. It was the Beatles. What can I say? It was the late '60s, right?
Yeah. Peace and love.
As they say, if you remember it, you weren't there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but of course, Gary can speak more to that maybe because he lived through that time period more than I did. I gave a Rings of Power update on where things are at, and some speculation on what the canonical story will be. As we're going to be, they're saying they're going to be introducing some pieces that will be canonical in season 2 coming up. So we're excited about that. Kip talked about the stories benefit from things not being explained too much. Rings of Power sometimes falls down on this, where maybe it tries to explain over much. Like, well, why did the elves come close to the dwarven kingdom? For Mithril. Okay, so why would they want Mithril? Oh, it must be because Mithril keeps them alive, and without Mithril they will perish. I mean, yeah, it's just like, just let the Force be the Force. Yes, exactly. So that whole thing. Joey mentioned a really good comment that they introduced. It seems like they introduced the Balrog too early in the Rings of Power. So we'll see what they do with that. And then we had a further discussion. We went back to March because March she read letter 227. But I wasn't there, so I said, can we please go back and reread it? Please, sir. Oh. So then we reread letter 227, and there was a great conversation on the topics, especially C.S. Lewis, Numenor, and what is the frontier for us now? Is it the sea? What is the frontier? Space. The final frontier. It's already been spelled out. Yeah. And then Gary, well, and of course this is referring to Tolkien talking about the frontier. Then Gary started reading letter 228 about the appendices, Tolkien pointing out that the readers delight in them, so kind of making a hard sell to the publishers that he really needs the appendices in the back of the Return of the King. And then Anthony, you talked about the verisimilitude that in creating these histories for these kingdoms, very much like you would have a chronology of Egypt, chronology of...
Or I was also thinking of the Anglo-Saxon.
Thank you. That's so good. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, yes. So really giving that sense of actual time and the passage of time, which for a mythological kingdom, or his own fantasy land, shows that, again, he worked very hard to make it believable. And then we talked about the critics versus the readers, and there was this lively discussion. Chris said, was Tolkien a simple-minded average Joe? I think not. And a debate ensued in which I took the opposing position. Gary pointed out that the appendices help us to know what happened to the characters. Hawk regales us about John Cleese coming to Spokane. Kip read the rest of letter 228. and focusing on the challenge of translation, specifically place names and people names from Lord of the Rings. And I just put on there, and I think this is when our meeting broadcast actually abruptly ended. Sorry, Gary. And it was that I was just saying that there was a wonderful interview that I posted in the notes of Robert Hardy. Many of us know him as the actor who portrayed Siegfried Farnan in the older All Creatures Great and Small TV show on PBS. Well, Robert Hardy has played lots of different roles, but did you know he was both a student of J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis while he was at Oxford? So, anyway, he talks about his experience in that article, which I recommend reading, from hillsdalecollegian.com. And we made our next meeting set for May 11th. Thus far is the reading of the notes for April.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so what do you want to start with first?
You want to go around the horn maybe and just share briefly if anybody has any Tolkien related news or questions that maybe would only take a few minutes. We can do that first while Hawk's getting ready for his presentation. Joey, anything Tolkien related question you have or comments?
About the new search for all Huntfagel. Yeah.
Thank you, Joey. Good comments. So if you haven't seen yet, there is now Embracer Entertainment has agreed that they can make another Lord of the Rings movie, and it looks like they're bringing back Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, and Philippa Boyens, and it's going to be set in the same time period as the previous fan movie.
Yeah.
How many of you have seen the fan film Hunt for Gollum? So it looks like they're going to be treating the same time period, which makes me wonder if they've, even though the fan-made movie was non-profit, they didn't make any money, so that's why they were left alone. I wonder if with all this now, that'll be shut down. You know?
I don't know.
So we'll see what happens. Has anybody tried to go on and see whether the Hunt for Gollum fan movie's still there? Anthony, don't try.
I know when I went on the Purple Sword, which is one of the lore video sites on YouTube,
Yeah.
they said that they saw that it was on there.
It was.
And that it I believe that was uploaded just a couple days ago.
Okay, thanks, Joey. So we'll see what happens. I just can't imagine with cash cow, like the movie industry doesn't like a lot of competition, especially if people accidentally go to the wrong Hunt for Gollum. Is it still there?
Yes.
Okay, so if you want to see the fan-made Hunt for Gollum before it possibly might be taken off the air, you might want to go and see that. I mean, for a fan-made film, I thought it was pretty good.
Well, I prefer Born of Hope.
The one about Marathon and
Yes. That was
I've got a question for you, gentlemen. Didn't they copyright it? I mean, that protects you. And it's not hard to get.
I don't think they could, Gary, and I say that only because they never had, as far as I know, they never had,
Permission from,
I don't think they looked for, because usually when you get licensing, it's in order to be able to create merchandise, right?
yeah.
And they basically said, we're going to try to stay out of trouble by not charging for it. They made it free and available, and I think, and Hawk's not here to corroborate this, but I think it was, they had to make it available at a lower streaming quality than what you could get on the big screen in order to show that they were not trying to compete with, at that point, the movies that had been created, which would have been the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy, right? So, but as Joey pointed out, that hasn't stopped the Lord of the Rings or Middle-earth Enterprises from actually, well, I guess now they're not calling it Middle-earth Enterprises, Embracer.
Yeah.
It is wanting to tell other stories about Middle-earth in that time period. Okay, Hawk.
Yes.
Do you recall? Yes, please. Thank you. Do you recall the conditions? We were just talking about. So Joey mentioned this news, right? About how Embracer has given the green light for the Hunt for Gollum as a proper. They don't call Middle-earth Enterprises anymore. It's just Embracer, right?
Tolkien Enterprises.
Tolkien Enterprises, is given the green light for this to be carried forward with a studio. So,
Interesting because there was the fan version.
well, that's what we were wondering about. And Anthony just checked. It's still available online.
Good.
You said at one point, I think something like they had to have it at a lower resolution.
That was Paramount for Star Trek.
Oh.
The Hunt for Gollum is original material. It's derivative,
Yeah.
but it was original material. And for whatever reason, they let it slide. That one and there were two. They
Born of Hope.
Born of Hope.
Yeah, Born of Hope.
And Anthony was saying that he thought the Born of Hope was even better.
Yeah.
They didn't have the.
They had a bigger budget and more. The Born of Hope one had a bigger budget and everything. Yeah, the Hunt for Gollum was the group that had less.
Born of Gondor.
Under it's the one about them. Rohirrim. Them trying to find the Rohirrim.
The War of the Rohirrim and the Helm Hammerhand, the horn. I don't think that's out yet, is it?
No.
But it was
No, they have a fan film about like Gondor trying to find the Rohirrim.
Oh, okay.
They were just.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a bunch of even lower, but those were like award-winning. Hunt for Gollum and Born of Hope.
There's probably even more than
And then
one.
there's a whole bunch. I've got DVDs of all these. I mean, there are hundreds of fan films, and as long as they're all original material and didn't directly infringe on trademark and copyright, they, for the most part, were allowed. But there were exceptions. So, for example, the Silmarillion projects, of which there were several, all got shut down. They all got C&Ds over the years. They were never allowed to do them. Part of the problem was they had direct quotes from some of the poetry here and there. They were, for the most part, original, but just a little bit, and they used the names directly, and just like, so it was just enough that they were shut down. And they've gone, like, one of the Silmarillions has gotten very far in production when they were shut down. Yeah. It looked really promising.
Wasn't that Gondolin? I thought there was one.
Something like that, yeah, something like that, which is really looking cool.
It was looking really
Because I was downloading the excerpts and stuff. And yeah, no, they were releasing lots of teasers and completely wiped.
Any comment online, Gary, about this news about Hunt for Gollum?
The only thing I said, I've never seen the fan version, but I made a comment about Smeagol or Gollum not being a very attractive, whatever talent, and I don't know how well it's going to do. So I mean, this is Hollywood is desperately looking for winners, and the Peter Jackson and the crew came up with a huge winner in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So I guess they're, he's got finances for this too, but we'll see.
Believe it or not, Gary, Andy Serkis is coming back to do the same role as Gollum.
Yeah, well, I know that. I saw the PR notice. So.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see whether or not they can pull it off and how much interest there is. There is out there in the Tolkien community some concern. I know I was listening to, was it Nerd of the Rings? He's pretty knowledgeable.
Yeah.
He knows the books. He knows the lore well. And he was saying it sounds good, but as usual, we're a little bit because you're choosing a time. There's very little material, and so that's where I'm okay with fans doing that. But when you put this forward,
And they want to sell video games and stuff, and they make it into a video game movie. Merchandising, yogurt. Yes. Pizza Hut.
Okay, so moving on. Anything related to Tolkien? Question or comment from Anthony?
Yes, we all of us, I think, have recently mourned the passing of Bernard Hill, who of course played Theoden.
Yes, indeed.
I think very well. And excellent. Elijah Wood posted a very touching tribute on Twitter or X.
Yeah, formerly known.
Theoden, I agree that regardless of how they may have changed a little bit of the portrayal of, cinematically, your core just fell off. But I do think that, honestly, he did a very good job of showing the gravitas of Theoden. Okay, so maybe we go to Gary and then we'll end with you, Hawk, and then you can just segue right into your piece. Is that okay? Gary, did you have anything, Tolkien news, questions, comments, or anything before we move on to Hawk reading his paper?
Actually, I don't. I mean, I saw that Hela died, and that's too bad. I didn't think he was that old, but I guess people die all the time at different ages.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, Hawk, the microphone is yours.
All righty then. Let's go into radio mode. This was originally, I had to do a final paper. It was proctored at EWU. So I had to go in, and I was only allowed to bring the source books. And I had to write an outline. It was an English assignment for prerequisite, English 401, 201, whatever it was. But I had to, in the time of the test, my final exam, write this paper from scratch. I could prepare, but I had to write the outline there on their computer, write the paper, all of it, and turn it all in. I had like a 4-hour window to do all of this. So I could prepare, and so I got my books ready, and I got my notes ready, and bookmarked and all of that. But then I had to write like the wind. And so the original draft was May 2nd, 2007. And it was longer and more detailed and had a lot more material in it, but it was very rough because I was trying to slam it out. And I got an A. I nailed that first draft because they take that into account, of course, that you don't have time to do revisions, etc. But then I put that out there, and the Tolkien Society invited me to come out to read it in front of at Oxford some years later, like for the 2011 Oxenmoot, whatever it was. Unfortunately, due to my passport problems, I had no way to get there. So they asked if they would be allowed to read it in absentia, and I said, great. So I revised it, tightened it a little bit, and sent it. And so that's the 7-page, double-spaced, large font. So it's really not that long. It's long enough, but and you can get this. It's on the TolkienScholars.org website, freely available. So J.R.R. Tolkien's love of trees and the environment. Tolkien takes the part of trees against all their enemies. J.R.R. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien loved the unspoiled countryside and felt a special affinity for trees, especially ancient ones, such as the oak, willow, and, one of his favorites, the Pinus nigra, a.k.a. the Pinus nigra, black pine or Austrian pine. That's according to Carpenter, Humphrey, Tolkien, a biography, 144. I'm going to leave out explaining all of the excerpts because that's going to be harder to follow in audio. But they're all there in the paper, so I've got everything sourced. This green ideology of Tolkien's was made manifest in many of his literary and personal writings. Indeed, Tolkien was greatly disturbed by the industrial environment to which he was intimately exposed during his younger years around the turn of the 20th century, and he repeatedly involved trees in various aspects of his writings, including those based in Middle-earth and Númenor. He despised the infernal combustion engine and felt strongly that heavy industry was causing terrible destruction to the earth. It is clear that Mordor corresponds to his perception of the industrialized modern era. Tolkien repeatedly involved trees in various aspects of his writings, including those based in Middle-earth and Númenor, as previously stated. J.R.R. Tolkien often wrote about his affinity for the environment, trees, and his dismay at the destruction of so much that he held so dear. He was especially vociferous about the, quote, lunatic destruction of the physical lands which Americans inhabit. End quote. Yes. Again and again, he wrote in detail to friends and family about the trees in the area where he was currently living or working in. It is possible that the dry, barren landscape of Bloemfontein, South Africa, where Tolkien was born, and the early industrial town of Sarehole, England, from his youth, greatly increased his love for the greenery and many colors of England's natural environment. Tolkien equated himself to his hobbits, stating how he liked, quote, gardens, trees, and unmechanized farmlands, end quote. Furthermore, Tolkien stated in no uncertain terms his stance regarding trees. In a June 30th, 1972, shortly before he died, letter to the editor of the Daily Telegraph, quote, in all my works I take the part of trees as against all their enemies, end quote. And so that's just like, what, a year before he died? That was one of his major final statements. I thought that was it. So, in fact, Tolkien so loved trees that in his Middle-earth, the Hobbit's calendar included a day initially known as Trees Day, a day during which to give weekly homage to trees, later called Trews Day, and finally Tuesday. Peoples of Middle-earth, page 123. A brief Tolkien biography. Tolkien is most famous outside of the academic world for his fictional works The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Slightly less well-known, only slightly less well-known, Vizini. Slightly less well-known are his many posthumous Middle-earth-related works edited and released by his son Christopher Tolkien. The short list includes The Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, The History of Middle-earth 12-book series, and most recently at the time of this writing, The Children of Húrin. J.R.R. Tolkien is also highly regarded in the academic world for his translations of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Pearl and Sir Orfeo from the 14th century works of the English West Midlands. This list must also include the 2009 publication of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun, written in the style of Old Norwegian and Icelandic poetic Edda. Also of significant impact on many literary courses is Tolkien's insightful and positive 1936 critique, Beowulf, the Monsters, and the Critics. This critique radically changed the previously negative views of fantasy literature by academia. In his 2001 translation of Beowulf, Seamus Heaney expressly credited Tolkien's work, commenting in his introduction, Tolkien's brilliant literary treatment changed the way the poem was valued and initiated a new era and new terms of appreciation. The impact of Tolkien on Beowulf is covered in more detail in the 2008 essay, J.R.R. Tolkien's Impact on the Beowulf Poem's Acceptance as Art by the Literary Community, which is another paper I wrote. In 1895, Tolkien's mother moved J.R.R. and his younger brother Hilary to England. Tolkien's father later died in South Africa. Tolkien initially grew up in Birmingham and then Sarehole, England. He loved the Worcester countryside. When he was forced to live in the more industrialized parts of England, he would think longingly of his years in the relatively unspoiled countryside, which greatly impacted his later works. And he would escape to the countryside or the coast whenever his busy schedule allowed. Many of the few photos Tolkien allowed to be taken of him publicly involved him sitting or standing beside the ancient oak or willow trees of Worcester or Oxford. Trees constantly recur in many of his works, both related and unrelated to his Middle-earth mythologies. These were not just peripheral scenery mentions of trees like most authors. An entire series of short stories known as Tree and Leaf were inspired by a single great-limbed poplar tree in view through the window of his home on a neighbor's yard that was suddenly cut down by its owner. About that event, Tolkien stated, "It is cut down now, a less barbarous punishment for any crimes it may have been accused of, such as being large and alive. I do not think it had any friends or any mourners, except myself and a pair of owls." Tolkien made trees a critical aspect of his stories and creation mythology for his universe known as Ea, in which Middle-earth was just a critical, though geographically small, part. In portions of the Silmarillion and related history Middle-earth books, Tolkien described the critical importance and detail of the two trees of Valinor. About their fate, all the tales of the elder days are woven. These trees were named Laurelin and Telperion, that waxed and waned throughout the day and night between golden and silver. These trees were the precursors to the sun and moon. They were later poisoned and destroyed, withered them, root, branch, and leaf. by the attack of Morgoth's spear and the envenomed maw of Ungoliant, in effect the mother of Shelob, the hideous giant spider. Morgoth, Sauron, and Mordor, in some aspects, represented for Tolkien the more negative aspects of man and technology, as he frequently called it the machine, which he also equated to magic. Though Tolkien repeatedly stated over the years that he despised allegory, he seems to have made some overt exceptions in the case of the environment and trees, especially heavy industry that he considered dirty, and though not inherently evil and malevolent, quote, pretty certain to serve evil ends, end quote. Above all, he considered heavy industry destructive of every aspect of the surrounding environment, and he even wished for the continued destruction of factories and power stations, from his letters. Quote, every tree has its enemies, few have an advocate. Letters 241. Another recurring reference to the power and significance of trees held by Tolkien was the white tree of Numenor, Nimloth, in Sindarin the White Blossom, which is the Sindarin form of Quenya or however I've slaughtered that, one of the names of Telperion. Nimloth was descended from the line of trees of Galathylion, the white tree of Tirion, which was in turn descended from white Telperion, which Yavanna caused to grow in the land of the Valar. This theme recurred throughout much of Tolkien's Middle-earth tales, ranging from the establishment of the kingdom of Numenor on the island continent, to Isildur's bravery in sneaking into the courts of the king of Numenor and Armenelos to steal the fruit of Nimloth, just before it was cut down and burned according to the machinations of Sauron. Isildur delivered it to Elendil, and the fruit traveled with the few survivors of Numenor to Middle-earth. This fruit was the seed that became the white tree of Minas Ithil, whose line was later continued in the tree of Minas Anor/Tirith, and the sign of the direct linking of the kingship of the Númenórean/Dúnedain. In later years, their descendants were found in the kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor. This theme also recurred when Aragorn had to find the sapling high in the mountains as part of fulfilling the renewal of Númenórean kingship, and proof that he was the true heir to the throne, as it was also the sign of new life and a new age, after the death of the previous tree for so many centuries. The white tree was also on Aragorn's standard. Tolkien manifests a means of defense/revenge in the form of the Ents and the Huorns, especially in the defined characters of Treebeard and Quickbeam, considered hasty by the other Ents. Ents were walking, talking tree herders that had been around for many thousands of years, looking after the ancient but dwindling forests. Pippin and Merry, with much cajoling and hasty words, managed to talk Treebeard and his fellow Ents into joining the fight against Saruman and his forces. This was despite the initial attitude of Treebeard being not altogether on anyone's side, because nobody is altogether on my side. Then there were the trees of Mirkwood and Fangorn Forest, part of what was long ago a contiguous block of forest known as Greenwood the Great. Now, many of the surviving ancient trees were so angry about the desecration over the eons, they exuded a palpable sensation that, quote, any that walked on two legs, end quote, might feel the trees wished to crush and strangle them, most especially the orcs. This similar state of not-so-latent maliciousness by ancient trees was also shown in the embodiment of Old Man Willow. The ancient tree did not trust men because of the destruction of his kin by axe and fire caused by men and orc. In the Adventures of Tom Bombadil, pages 197 to 198, when Bombadil came into the area of Old Man Willow, the tree trapped and tried to strangle him. Only through song, cajoling, and persuasion did Bombadil convince Old Man Willow of his good intentions. Then, and only then, was he able to be freed from the tree's clutches. A similar situation occurred with the hobbits in the chapter The Old Forest from the Fellowship of the Ring, when Old Man Willow captured Merry and Pippin in a similar fashion, and only Bombadil was able to save them by threatening Old Man Willow with, "Old Grey Willow Man, I'll freeze his marrow cold if he don't behave himself." A third distinct variant of tree awareness was manifest in the Huorns. These trees were considered more sleepy, less awake than the Ents, but more malicious. They wreaked revenge upon any that would threaten their kind with axe or fire. The Huorns were also capable of being far more mobile than the likes of Old Man Willow. Huorns were used to help turn the tide of the Battle of Helm's Deep in the Two Towers. The Huorns traveled the many leagues from Fangorn Forest to Helm's Deep and cleaned up the mess of the remaining Uruk-hai and Dunlendings by surrounding, capturing, and cutting off the escape of the orcs and evil men who were never to be seen again. As can be seen throughout his writings, trees played an especially strong role in Tolkien's personal and public life, not to mention their prevalence in his work itself. Tolkien best summed up his overall attitude towards trees versus man and industry with his 1955 letter to his American publisher, Houghton Mifflin and Company, stating, quote, "The ennoblement of the ennoble I find specially moving. I am obviously much in love with plants and above all trees, and always have been. And I find human maltreatment of them as hard to bear as some find ill treatment of animals." Letters 165. So that was the summary. Then it goes to the print citations and references. So there you go.
Let's go around and take turns just responding to what's been shared today. Gary, we'll go with you first if you have any thoughts or questions or comments for Hawk. Did we lose him?
Gary? No, he's still there. Are you there? Oh, I think he just dropped. He was there, and then maybe. Okay, yeah, he did drop. Oh, now he's back. Welcome back, Kata.
I got a question. That, by the way, that glitch was entirely mine.
Okay.
I hit the wrong button. You referred to Mordor and that, and you had plenty of sightings that prove that there was the substance to it. But I also heard that Mordor was, how would I say, the horrible atmosphere of Mordor, and the destruction, dystopia, whatever you want to call it, was also kind of like a vision that Tolkien had because he'd been in the Battle of the Somme, which was just hell on earth. So I was wondering what your take on that was.
Much of his writings about the horror of war and the destruction to the landscape and people, yes, he's written in many letters at length, and Humphrey, a Carpenter letter about the Tolkien and the war and all of that covers at great length how the war shaped his vision of things. And so his description of wars and the carnage even century later, the landscape being different, the mounds with the flowers, all of those are definitely directly attributable to his experiences of war and the Battle of the Somme and all of that. I don't recall, and again, it's been some years since I wrote this paper, but I don't remember him directly saying Mordor was attributed to the Somme. Rather, it was attributed to mechanization and industrialization and all of that because it's a base. It wasn't so much where all the wars were, even though there was some. So I don't know that there's a one-to-one link. It's certainly related, right? It's the military industrial complex epitomized, right? Because it was all about building war machine, and that whole landscape is completely laid waste, which you saw during World War I and World War II when the countries ramped up the military-industrial complex to build the machines, and the standards were a little low in the urgency to get machinery out.
And it takes the slaves of Durin to supply the food.
Exactly.
Obviously, the land of Mordor cannot supply.
Didn't have enough. Exactly. So I think Mordor certainly ties into his experiences of war, but I don't know that it is considered a direct parallel to the Somme. I think the other battles are much closer parallels.
Maybe we could say, Gary and Hawk.
That's just my guess.
What about something like the dead marshes.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Daggerland, yeah, exactly. Place like that. The bodies, the leftover, yeah, exactly. All of the battlefields that he describes, I would say, definitely tie into his experiences of war, both during World War One and then the battle, Britain and all of that. All of those battlefields, I would say, yes, that would definitely equate.
So could there be, like, I guess my question back to you all would be, is that kind of like the difference between the absence of flourishing versus the presence of destruction? Like Mordor is, so there is no flourishing. When Sam and Frodo cross over the Morgai, they run, basically there's no water anymore.
Yeah.
There's nothing living at all. In that transition from like the mountains of Mordor into Mordor itself, there's nothing really. It's all dust, whatever, ash,
Slag.
Yeah, slag.
Yeah.
But we know that volcanic, ash can be very good for the soil.
Sure.
If it's tilled, etc.
But he always kept the clouds preventing sunlight from
Exactly. So
until he's gone. Because remember, the clouds clear
Yeah.
once he's gone.
Yeah.
And then in later writings, there's things about growth and all of that.
Absolutely, which we
Yeah.
think pre-Barad-dûr, before Mordor becomes Sauron's stronghold,
It
used
wasn't-
to have been a land that
Yeah.
did have things growing in it.
Yeah.
Another example would be so the presence of destruction, right, would be like something happened to blight the land. The dead marshes, maybe the withered heath that Smaug when he lays waste to the land around Erebor.
Well, but Tolkien also described all of the industrialization going on in Mordor, creating the armor, creating the war machines, weapons, all of these smelters belching forth. In addition to the belching from the mountain, there was all that industrial belching that he went out of his way to describe, which we get a taste of with Orthanc,
Exactly.
and the destruction there
Yeah.
from the industrial
And if
war
that
machine
had
growing.
not been halted, what would that
Exactly, that
look
would have
like?
continued. Exactly. So I think that's where it equates to the industrial war machine as opposed to the actual battles per se. And then, of course, Orthanc does have a battle because of the Ent. And they try to undo all those
Can you
toxins
imagine in the
by washing it away.
Orthanc or non-Premier, whatever that valley, Isengard.
Yes.
There we go. If you
Take the hobbits to Isengard.
If it becomes a second Mordor, in a
Yes.
sense that waste could conceivably stretch all the way to Mordor.
Yes.
Which is interesting as an anti-example of Greenwood the Great, which you
Yes.
just mentioned.
Yeah, which had already been
was
trimmed back.
stretched.
And the Númenóreans had stripped it from the tree, from all of the river banks. Slowly, all got stripped back as they did it to ship back to their island, which of course is a parallel to the UK and its peak as an empire, right? And taking all the resources from other lands and bringing them to the island. I saw that as a direct parallel there. And yeah, he
Did
stripped
that-
from Middle-earth bear.
Did that answer your question, Gary?
Yeah, well, I mean, it did. But I think Peter Jackson and the crew did a wonderful job with their depiction of Mordor. I mean,
Yeah,
it was, if I imagine a place hell on earth, that was
yeah,
it.
yeah. They did do a good job with that. Yeah,
The only thing it was missing was the trenches.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, where there's a whip, there's a way.
So Mordor. Okay, so your question had to do with Mordor and the
Battle of the Somme.
effects of the horror of this. The
Yeah,
destruction, right?
Tolkien's experience, yeah, of war.
And Tolkien's
How much was that a parallel?
Okay. I sometimes do email John Garth.
Hmm.
Occasionally, I could ask him if he has time, just to ask him what his opinion on that is, see if he has any idea.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Um,
I wish Thomas Lewinsky wasn't on such a different time zone, because I'd love to have him in our meetings. He's in Germany.
Well, this is the battle. It was, if you look at the chronological time, it was a small portion, but it was a very significant portion
Oh, yeah.
of not only Tolkien's life but everybody's life back who had to fight in the First World War.
I think
Yeah.
I think we should probably all try to get a copy of John Garth's book, Tolkien and the Great War, because there's a lot of great material in there that he deals with. So he's done a lot of research. So if you don't have that yet, Gary, that would be probably pretty interesting to you, I think.
And John Garth and Tolkien and the Great War?
Tolkien and the Great War by John Garth. It's been acclaimed as one of the best works on Tolkien and his experience in World War I. Anyway, Anthony, did you have any questions or comments that you wanted to bring up to Hawk regarding his paper?
Oh, I think it was a great paper. Obviously, wish I could have written it.
Of course, I saw the things wrong with it because I looked at it a long time, like, oh, I should have done that. Should be over here. Oh, I was out of bad flow.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I think in Legendaria, the notion of trees being a prominent part of his creation goes back to the first stage, the two trees.
Yeah. Pre-first stage.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
actually, I wrote a short essay in German for my German class.
Oh,
Summarizing the story of Mongolian sucking the
nice,
life.
nice.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I got a B plus on it because maybe my German was a bit ungrammatical. Maybe my professor wouldn't
Anthony,
understand this.
ungrammatical? What? Only in your third language, right?
Yes. Yeah, because I thought the story of the Mongolian giant spider sucking the life out of the two trees was very interesting. It's, I think it plays into Tolkien's conception of the light and dark dichotomy, and how order and evil represent darkness, and the good or the flourishing or beauty that is represented by light. Yucks.
Joey, did you have any comments or questions for Hawk about his paper, Tolkien's Love of Trees? Okay. I would like
Oh, by the
to.
way, it's not to say that, my question is not to say that it wasn't a good paper, it was just wondering about that one aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, I think the sign of a good paper is that it makes you ask more questions, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got one more question. What was, why did you write the paper? I mean, you had 4 hours to do it, and
Yep. It was my final exam for an English class at university. And so I had 4 hours to write I think it was supposed to be between a 4 to 10 page paper on the fly. I could get all my resources ready, but I couldn't have anything written. And I could have a handwritten outline if I wanted to guide me. But then I had to type it all on their computer under a timer. So
it sounds almost like punishment or torture.
it was not my idea.
I belong to the Slow Writers Association, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a perfectionist when it comes to
Yeah, no, it really was to try to show what, and I had to do try to be as good as I could in just 4 hours. That was not easy. The only thing that really helps me is I have a really high typing rate because of my software development since I was 9. So when I'm at my peak, I've been as high as 120 words a minute after error adjustment. I'm not there now, but at my peak I was. And so that helped me a lot to be able to crank it out and start to revise it and move it around and before I ran out of time. And, but yeah, it was good enough that, again, it was just a bachelor's degree. It wasn't like the highest thing, but it was not my idea of fun. I love doing the research and writing paper on the stuff, but having to do it under a timeline like that, ugh. But if you're going to be like a journalist or something, then that would be good training. Having to work to a tight timeline and get good at slamming together. So blog postings, it did help my skill with blog postings.
Where do I start, Hawk? I enjoyed it very much.
Good.
I have a deep love for trees as well.
I have 16 on my little property. Part of the reason why I got it was those trees.
I know. When we moved to Spokane, any move I've had lately in the last 20 years, it's like, it could be an amazing house, but if it doesn't have a good tree, forget it. We have a ponderous pine tree in our yard, and it's. I had a gal. There's a lady from the National Forest who was in town, and I asked her to stop by because I was concerned about some beetles on some galls, and I'm just like, ooh, is this the bad situation?
Boar beetles, yeah.
Yeah. So she looked at it, she said, nope, it's more of a, what do you call it, not a beneficent, but it's a
Benign.
benign, thank you, a benign kind of beetle that you don't need to worry about. But she said it's one of the bigger ponderosas she's seen. She wouldn't be surprised if it was
Pre-fire?
250 to 300.
So it'd be pre-fire,
Yeah.
which there aren't many of those left.
No, exactly.
Yeah. There was a big fire in Spokane about, 1906? That leveled everything.
Was it 1910?
Somewhere, I thought it was 1910, but I'm not sure. But it leveled the whole area. And, not just the buildings and such.
Oh, you're talking about the fire of the city. Yeah, that was even earlier. That was
1889, okay. Yeah, but it leveled everything, but it took down the forests all over except for, pockets.
I didn't realize that. Yeah, I didn't think about how it was just the.
Yeah, no, the whole region burned. It was much bigger than the fires we've had here. I think probably closer to the big Yellowstone fires.
Well, I know that there was in 1910 the big burn. That was
Okay,
later.
and maybe that I'm not from here.
Wallace and Kellogg.
Yeah.
And that whole
Was that
area,
1910?
That was 1910.
So that so probably a combination of the two then.
But I would think it makes sense that if there was, because downtown, a large part of the downtown burned.
Yeah,
And of course, if you're near the woods.
between those two fires, shall we say?
Yeah.
There's not much over 30, 40 years old now,
If you get the chance. And,
except up north, like Ponderay Park.
That's what I'm about to mention.
Yeah, great park.
If you get a chance to go, there is a
Highway 2.
Theodore Roosevelt. I'm thinking of the ancient cedars. There's a grove of ancient cedars up by Nordman. It's basically just inside Idaho. It's close to Priest Lake. It's way up close to Canada. And if you go up there, you can see there are quite a few cedars, which are 500 years old. There are some old ones, which are really beautiful, worth seeing. But back to Tolkien in England. So we lived there for 4 years. I got the chance to, do some Tolkien tourism, I guess you'd call it. But it wasn't until we went back in 2015 that we actually tried to find the black pine. Now, sadly, it had just been cut down the year before, so we could have actually seen it, actually touched the tree.
And thus indirectly reached out to Tolkien.
Yes, exactly.
Across the time.
And of course, this is a tree. This is a photograph you've probably seen before.
Yes, the famous photo, yes.
So there he is, leaning against the tree.
Oh yeah.
In his tweed.
And if you notice, there is a dark bowl, like a depression above his hand.
Snick.
You see that? That dark
Yes.
depression? Now that, yes, I get your reference. That, here it is, in 2014, that same spot, and this is what the tree looked like when it was still alive. Some say it resembles ants.
And that is the picture I used in my paper.
Yeah,
That's the header of my paper.
But, whoa,
Yeah.
because a storm happened,
Yeah,
and the
it broke.
old tree, a big branch of it broke. The tree itself was not dead by any means, but it didn't look great, and it's in a botanical garden.
And they're worried about lawsuits.
What they found out about was lawsuits, but also that they discovered that inside there was rot.
Yes.
And so they said, what should we do?
Yeah.
And so originally they were like, well, maybe we can leave part of it up.
There was a
and
lot of
make
debate.
Sculpture, and we'll do all these wonderful things with it.
Yeah.
And people can still have that connection.
Make bears and salmon out of it.
really
Sculpture, yeah. Chainsaw
Right.
sculptures, yeah.
Well, instead they're like, nope, we're going to make it nice and tidy, and we're going to remove the whole thing.
Yeah, not even a stump.
And here's the crazy thing. My kids, we had so little money left before we left England. I mean, like, this was, we were doing it, trying to keep it to, so we had some money. We didn't have money enough for parking in Oxford. We were like, okay, we couldn't have enough change. And of course, there's no swipe at that time, 2015. You couldn't even do it electronically or with a QR code.
Wow.
So it was literally only British coins.
Mm.
So we dropped off our children Yeah, we dropped off our teenagers at the entrance to the botanical garden with money to get in. We didn't have enough money to go in ourselves.
Oh.
But Alice was 18. And we said, take your sisters, try to go find where the tree is, take a picture of where the tree was,
Yeah.
take a picture, and because we thought there'd be something like a plaque or whatever. Anyway, and then we drove around, came back, picked them up. They said, it's not there.
Yeah.
Literally, the
Yeah.
grass is like
Grown
as
over.
if it had never been. The only sign that it had been there is because when that branch had come down in the storm, it had actually fallen on the wall.
Right, and the wall damage.
And then there was some wall
Yeah.
damage, which they had patched. So the only way you would know that the tree had been there is because of that patch on the wall.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh,
Yeah. Erased from history.
erased from history.
Yeah.
There wasn't
At
even
the very least, leave a memorable stump with a plaque or something. It's not unusual, yeah. Yeah. I get it if they don't want to do the Western style, like you see all these yards with an old tree cut down, so they make it into bears and salmon and eagles, and
Yeah, yeah.
now they've got wood sculpture in their front
Yeah,
yard. And
yeah.
fine, okay. I get them not doing that. But they could have left a stump with a plaque or cut it in the shape of a bench with a plaque or some honorarium of something so ancient.
But you know this.
But it must have offended someone, and it had to be wiped. As Tolkien was talking about.
I don't know.
It would have offended someone somewhere.
Yes, but
Their sensibilities.
Their sensibilities. I will make a shout out to a book. Hawk's seen this before, but this is a great, one of my favorite books. It's called Britain's Tree Story. Should I?
If you want to do it to this camera right here, that's a really good one for it.
Is that showing there? I'm not sure.
He'd see it on that camera on the ceiling if you want to let him see it.
That's not the camera.
Yeah, he's got the ceiling camera. Or no, I'm sorry, he's the one with the TV, so just hold it towards the TV one. Not that one, the one by the TV.
I
That
can
one,
see
there
it.
you go.
Britain's tree story.
So this is the history and legends of Britain's ancient trees, and they have some amazing ones. I won't read through all of them, but you have oaks. There are oaks that are 1,000 years old. There are some yew trees and oak trees that are 2,000 years old. Some of them are thought to have still been standing from a time when they may have been part of a druid grove. So then there's a whole thing you can do on the Green Man there too.
Wow. Impressed. It kind of reminds me of what happened to my brother and his son when they decided to cut down this huge tree next to their house and misjudged it. And it took out the wall, it took out part of the wall and the fireplace in the living room. But,
Wow.
he never did work as a lumberjack, so, it wasn't as accurate.
Yeah, I did. Oops. Both a lumberjack and a logger, the difference, right? So, but I was a legal lumberjack. We were allowed to take down the standing deadwood and stuff like that. We didn't. Yeah, it was working at the mine and stuff, so we were allowed to do that.
Well, it's interesting because when we talk about Tolkien and the environment, Tolkien was not. He may have been a radical in certain things, but he wasn't a radical environmentalist in that he wasn't against, like, you look at him, he says, what is it, pre-industrial or pre-mechanical, farming practices.
Yeah.
Would have included pollarding trees,
Yeah.
would have included all the things.
This really brings to mind. Have you been watching Clarkson's Farm on Amazon Prime?
No, not since you showed the last thing to me.
Okay, they just came out season 3.
Oh, really?
And they have season 4 approved. And so any of you who know, like, I was a mechanic for a long time, so I got known from the Top Gear days when it was all car shows. But he and two others, James May and Richard Clarkson, Richard Hammond and Jeremy Clarkson, were this trio for decades on Top Gear. Now, it was just a car show initially. But the three of them developed a synergy and started to become more comedic, kind of Three Stooges-esque. And bumbling and incompetent became kind of their shtick, and squabbling, and it was a very Three Stooges type shtick. been British style.
Very much.
In British style Three Stooges. And yet they're mates, right? That's the term they use it because when Clarkson had to leave, he didn't technically get fired from the BBC, but had to leave the BBC. They offered the other two to stay on the show and take over, and they went with him and joined Amazon Prime in the U.S., followed him willingly to Grand Tour, which is the series that's run for 4 years on Amazon Prime to continue the Tar Show. Meanwhile, Top Gear continued with other people like the guy from Friends, Joey, took over, and other. And then recently, one of the show people nearly got killed, and got maimed, and the show just went under just recently. Clarkson, during his Top Gear days, made a lot of money. He became one of the wealthier people in the UK. Very outspoken. He has a big mouth. He is not politically correct. And in the UK, that's even worse.
Oh, yes.
Right, he's not conforming. And he went and bought, back in 2007 or 11, whatever, he bought 1,000 acres in the Cotswolds. So I'm going to tie all this to Tolkien. This is not the Cotswolds, yeah. Anyway, beautiful and varied. 50% of it's arable, farmland. The other 50% is like woods and other. It's amazing. It's gorgeous. Yeah, beautiful countryside. But the guy who managed it was retiring in 2019, and Clarkson decided, I'll take over the management. How hard can it be? Just one of his, oh no, he's in trouble. How hard can it be? There's going to be problems. And so he learns to farm. And it is a comedy of errors. And it's got some tragedies to it. But this is the most emotive version of Clarkson you ever get to see, because he allows moments of softness to appreciate, like when he gets sheep, he's just sitting there on the rail going, hello sheeps, hi sheeps, oh I love this, the sun coming up, my sheep is this is just the most amazing moment in my life right now. And increasingly he falls in love because he's still going back and forth to London and jet set around the world. He goes all over the world on adventures everywhere. He can be anywhere in the world he wants, and he's seen much of the world. But it has become closer and closer to him. So he took that over, and first year is kind of painful to watch his bumbling. It's bad. And it's right as COVID, or the following year is when COVID hits. So then he deals with that. And then they have the worst floods and the worst droughts in 80 years, and just one thing after another. So anyway, it has been the most watched show in the UK. For Amazon, and they've gotten awards from the farming industry because it makes, I think, everybody from K through 12 and early college should be required to watch the series to understand how the food chain works, because he is showing you from square one as a newbie what it takes, because only 1% to 2% are in agriculture, right? And he's trying so hard, and it is brutally difficult. Worse yet, because he did things like blow up his house and stuff during Top Gear. The neighbors hate him with a purple passion. The council in the town council of this little tiny town hate him, cannot stand him. And so everything he tries to do, they try to thwart. So he's at a constant battle with the town council, and he's trying to make this work. Subsidies after the UK did Brexit,
Yeah.
all those subsidies went away for farmers.
Worst time ever.
So he's like, okay, how do you make a farm work without the subsidies? So he started to come up with ideas, and I won't say because of spoilers, but to try to make the farm self-sufficient. And all these all these environmentally friendly things. And again, he's Mr. Car Guy. They give him grief all the time for destroying the environment with his cars. And he's actually trying to find a way to make his farm completely self-sustainable, and they're blocking him on all of his efforts. So it's very interesting. They just came out with season 3, and he's now getting into a groove. He's in his 3rd, 4th year. He's starting to learn it, new challenges, new things like that. And they've already signed up for season 4. So, but love of trees, love of the environment. In season 3, very interestingly, there is a fallen willow. This is why I was bringing this up in part. It has fallen, and no fault any of the riverbank cut away at it, and during the winter it fell. Big willow.
Is this like a reality show?
Kind of. I mean, Yes, but it's not like your typical. There's not like it's not your like Big Brother or Survivor Ireland or anything like that. And Top Gear was actually scripted television that was reality show like, but was actually semi-planned.
This is a little bit more like reality TV, but in the
But-
best sense.
Yeah, this
Because it's
because I can't stand
this
reality
is really
shows.
really his farm. He's actually
It really is, yeah. He's doing it, and and so some of it is semi-scripted. Okay, we're going to try this, but there's a lot of things they just have no control over. So yeah, but it's way more interesting because of his silliness than all the other farm shows. Like there's been these farm shows that run for decades that are just boring, that bore you to tears. And this has made people much more aware of the farming industry. So anyway, this willow had fallen, and he wants apparently. Even though the roots were completely, like the roots had all come up and everything, apparently you could still save it. So they go through great effort to get it upright again and get it remounted, and it comes back to life.
What?
Willows, yeah.
Well, because it's a willow.
Because it's a willow. Not all trees, but certain trees, like the willow.
Or old man willow.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's a big tree like Old Man Willow. It was a big one. But to save it, they had to chop it. Because it was too big to bring all the way up, so they had to butcher it to save it.
Wow.
And there's a bunch of things, like a couple seasons back, he went in and cleared out the undergrowth of his woods, which he got so much grief from the environmental community. And he's like, before you rip into me, this helps the woods. This makes it healthier for the plants, for the trees, it gives new generations. But then he got lambasted because he went in there with mechanized industry and went, oh yeah, just enjoying the glee of destruction, right? But it all was for the overall good. He thinned the woods. He chopped a certain amount of trees to help thin it, and it all benefited. But see, it's that style. So it's been really good. And my wife does not. She cannot stand Jeremy Clarkson elsewhere at Top Gear like a lot of people can. She's from Seattle and such. But she's actually enjoyed Clarkson's
What's the
Farm.
name of the show again?
Clarkson's Farm, CLARKSON''S on Amazon Prime.
Clarkson's Farm.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, my
And
wife
it's
and
free
I,
on Prime.
My wife and I are gonna have to go watch it.
Yeah,
She hasn't
she and I
seen
watch it for date night.
You and I watched the first season together.
Okay.
So I need to go back and show her that.
Yeah. And you get the same people and new adventures and new animals and new things. He's always got new ideas, and most of them go terribly wrong. Every now and then he has some gold ideas, and that's the way it is with innovators, right? So,
Yes.
but he also is getting more soft. He's getting softer and softer hearted as he progresses, which I think is. So anyway, the willow, the tree falling. I think that all ties to Tolkien. I think Tolkien would be horrified at some of the things Clarkson's doing, but gratified to see that he's raising this awareness for the UK and the world. It's very popular worldwide, but especially the UK. And I think it should be required viewing for all kids and students who have no idea where their food comes from.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Hawk,
You bet.
shall we read letter 229? Or
Did anybody else want to on the rotation? Okay,
I think we all got a turn.
great.
Right. I just want to interject
Please.
something. I do know that in Europe, and I'm sorry, the English don't consider themselves Europeans, but I think they're subject to this too. There's kind of a ecological war on farmers.
Oh, yeah. No, and that
And the Dutch, what surprised me, I mean, in the worldwide scheme of things, United States is number one as far as agricultural output. The Dutch were number two.
Right.
And, the farmers there are not very happy wherever they go. They just clog the city streets with tractors and everything else. So the authorities have kind of backed off, which I
He
think
has
is.
been given awards from the farming industries for his presentation of the farming industry. So his presentation is really showing people what it's like to be a farmer.
Farming is not an easy gig.
No, and I work ranches
Not
and
at all.
farms, so I can relate too. Yeah. And then he's got a younger guy who's trying to get new people into farming because there aren't many. It's a dying industry because nobody new is going into it. So, and how we eat.
Well, I just want to bring up an interesting point, which is that for all of his love of the environment, I don't think that Tolkien ever lived on a farm.
Oh. Hawk.
Oh shoot.
Just holy crap.
Okay.
I'll be alright.
All right.
Yeah.
Right, no, but he lived in the countryside.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, yeah. The
He
woods
was.
and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Be okay.
Yeah, just really badly cracked.
Yeah, I've got one of those. Sucks.
Okay. All right. Well, let's read letter 229 then, since we have about half an hour left. I'll start us off, and then maybe anybody else wants to take the next turn. Letter 229. Hold on a second. Let everybody find their copy of Tolkien's letters.
Yep.
From a letter to Alan and Unwin, 23rd of February, 1961.
What number again?
229.
Okay.
I now enclose a copy and version of Olmark's nonsense, in the hope that you may think it justifies my annoyance. I have not looked at his second outburst. I feel I cannot just now take any more. The following are excerpts from Tolkien's commentary on Oka Olmark's introduction to the Swedish translation of Lord of the Rings. Passages in italics are quotations from Tolkien's translation of the introduction. It is hard to believe that the deep-rooted native-born hobbit from Middle South England would feel very much at home in Leeds. Inauguration into the Anglo-Saxon chair in Oxford was for him like coming home again from a trial expedition up to the distant Fornost. This is Olmark's first serious piece of presumptuous impertinence. I was devoted to the University of Leeds, which was very good to me, and to the students whom I left with regret. The present students are among my most attentive readers, and write to me, especially about the appendices. If O's nonsense was to come to the notice of the university, it would give offense, and O would have to publicly apologize. As for Fornost, a glance at the book would show that it is comparable rather to the King's Mounds at Old Uppsala than to the city of Leeds. One of his most important writings, published in 1953, also treats of another famous homecoming, the homecoming of Bjornholm's son. Coming home dead without a head, as Bjornoth did, is not very delightful. But this is spoof. O knows nothing about Bjornoth or his homecoming, never mentioned until I wrote a poem about it, and he's not seen the poem. I do not blame him except for writing as if he knew. All right, now I'm going to pass on to Tom here. So now you can read Olmark's next comments and Tolkien's deconstruction.
And that's what number? Letter?
229.
29.
All right, Anthony.
Alright, page 354. So the professor began by telling tales about it, meaning Middle Earth, to his children, and then to his grandchildren, and they were fascinated and clamored for more and still more. One can clearly see before one the fireside evenings in the peaceful villa out at Sandfield Road in Headington near Oxford, with the Barrow Downs or Headington Hills in the rear, and the misty mountains of the 560-foot-high Shotover in the background. Totally nice. This is a
Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Two exclamation marks to start with.
This is such outrageous nonsense that I should suspect mockery if I did not observe that O is ever ready to assume intimate knowledge that he has not got. I have only two grandchildren. One, 18, who first heard the book 5 years ago. The other is only 2. The book was written before I moved to Headington, which has no hills, but is on a shoulder, as it were, of Shotover. Should I continue? Sure. And then Olmarks writes, the ring is in a certain way to a nibble-looking ring. Both rings were round, and their resemblance ceases. And Olmarks continues, which was really forged by Volund, the mastersmith, and then by way of Vitka Onver, passed through the hands of the mighty Aesir into the possession of Hreidmar and Dragon after the dragon's fall, coming to Sigurd, the dragon slayer, after his murder by treacherous conspirators, coming to the Burgundians, after the death of Atlas, whatever, snake pit, coming to the Huns, then to the sons of Yonaker, to the Gothic tyrant Modric, etc. And Tolkien writes, thank heaven for the etc. I began to fear that it would turn up in my pocket. Evidently, Dr. O thinks that it is in his. What is the point of all this? Those who know something about the Old Norse side of the Nibelung traditions, mainly reference to since the name forms used during Norse, will think this is a farrago of nonsense. Those who do not will hardly be interested. But perhaps they are also meant to conclude that Dr. O also has Mästerskap, which is Swedish for mastery, masterly skill. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the Lord of the Rings. As for Wayland Smith being a pan-type or being reflective of Bombadil and Gollum, this is a sufficient example of the silly methods and nonsensical conclusions of Dr. O. He is welcome to the rubbish, but I do not see that he, as a translator, has any right to unload here.
Hawk, you want to take a crack?
All right. Okay, so continuing in parentheses for Dr. O, here in Mordor rules the personification of satanic might Sauron, read perhaps in the same partial fashion. At other identifications Olmarks has made, Stalin. There were a lot of little brackets there. Tolkien. There is no perhaps about it. I utterly repudiate any such reading which angers me. The situation was conceived long before the Russian Revolution. Such allegory is entirely foreign to my thought. The placing of Mordor in the east was due to simple narrative and geographical necessity within my mythology. The original stronghold of evil was, as traditionally, in the north. But as that had been destroyed, and was indeed under the sea, there had to be a new stronghold, far removed from the Valar, the elves, and the sea power of Numenor. Yeah. There were reminiscences of journeys on foot in his own youth up into the Welsh border regions. As Bilbo said of the dwarves, he seems to know as much of my private pantries as I do myself, or pretends to. I never walked in Wales or the marches in my youth. Why should I be made an object of fiction while still alive?
Oh my God.
Gary, you want to take a crack?
Don't mince words, Bones. Tell us how you really feel.
That's the end.
That's the end, yeah.
Looks like Gary's
Out there.
Oh, Gary stepped away. Maybe I had to run the restroom or the dogs or something. So, carry on.
We didn't do our 1 hour break.
We did not. And we're getting nigh our ending time, I think. Yeah, about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So, well, let's comment on that. Tolkien sometimes couches things a little bit.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yes,
Yeah.
Bones, yeah. Boy, he did not hold back on that one. Again, it started with double exclamation marks. Does he ever do that before? I don't remember that at the beginning of a sentence.
Yeah, he's a little teed off, this guy.
This the Swedish translator of what I was talking.
Yep.
Hasn't there been like a screening process for translating?
Well, that was in the previous letters about all these translations that nobody was running them by him.
Yes.
And he was writing about like, I don't know about this. So,
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult process. I'm guessing it would start by, in a foreign country, people are buying the English copies of this book, and there's a demand, so then some publishing company says,
do this.
we need to get a translator for
Yeah.
this. And so asks him for permission, he says yes, and then they go and grab their own people.
And then they don't consult him.
They don't
And
consult.
that's, you know, with Other Minds magazine since 2005, stuff like that. We reach out all the time to sources to say, hey, this is our take on it. Here's our draft. Do you have anything you want to say? We can, you know, they already gave us permission, but will you kind of let us know, or you know, if we're going astray? You check with the primaries if you can. If they're dead, they're dead. Then you're out of luck. You got to extrapolate. But while they're alive, yeah. But while yes, go to their pockets.
Why write me as a piece of fiction?
Well, as he says, yeah, fiction. Well, I'm still alive. that's so true.
There's a lot of truth in that.
Yes.
Yes, there is. Well, we just finished the letter there, Gary. Was there any comment you had?
Yeah, sorry, I had to get up and leave for a second.
Yep, 229 is the one we're on.
We finished it.
I, you know, while you guys were talking, I finished reading the rest of it that I'd missed before.
Well, we probably have time if you, unless you have comments you want to share. We could do letter 230 if you would like to read that one.
Okay, I can do that, but I just wanted, one comment is, as Hawk said, that Tolkien was ticked off at people translating his works incorrectly, or what he thought was incorrectly. And I believe he was really upset with the Swedes about
Not anywhere in the same category, but I've written a number of papers since '04 that others have translated, and then Other Minds magazine has been translated in a number of languages now. But some of the papers I wrote are psychology, rec therapy related, and I found these just bizarre writings referencing my work. So like there's this one about, first it started as an ant simulator, and then was referencing all of my role-playing game research as reason why their ant simulator will help with therapy and all this other stuff, completely misconstruing my, quoting blocks of my text, but completely, shoehorning it in and making it sound like they interviewed me for it. Well, what's interesting too is later it was a goat simulator. Later it was a farm simulator. Like they keep changing what the simulator is, and they keep using me as an authority to help them sell this as a therapeutic tool and stuff.
My goodness.
It's bizarre, and I can't get a hold of them. Like, it pops up on all over. It'll go through all the social media for a while, and bizarre things like that. And then every now and then I'll find somebody who's translated one of my papers without ever asking me. They've translated my paper and then published it, saying it's translated from mine, but they never checked with me to see if any of it was in the ballpark or anything. It's happened many times. And so one time, Thomas, who's in Germany, was like, have you seen this paper they translated? Like, I don't read German. I can barely, I can eke my way through bits and pieces. He's like, yeah, it's horrible. It's the way, I think they just used Google Translate or something and called it a German translate. It's so bad, it's unreadable, and it's in your name. And they don't attribute who the translator was. They make it look like I tried to translate it. Stuff like that. And it's just like, oh man. So I can, on a very small scale, can relate to what he's talking about. Like, come on, people, I'm still alive. I'm very accessible. I will gladly help out. You are welcome to translate, but please ask. And do the modicum of effort. So, and now with AI, it's just going to be that much worse.
Yeah.
Already, AI really has trouble with my writings. Like if you go into GPT and try to get quotes of the stuff that is in Chat GPT and all that, because it goes back to '04 and all, it gets so confused. It does not understand what I'm trying to explain. So it comes up, it hallucinates. It comes up with all these things that I never said, and then quotes me. There's that's not what I wrote.
I'm just still having fun with this idea of AI hallucinating.
Oh yeah, that's a common AI thing. AI hallucinates all the time. They get confused very quickly and so it starts to justify its conclusions by filling in blanks from made up stuff.
Strawberry field forever.
It's logical. When you're 100% logic, you can get in these logic loops of just complete bizarreness. That's the danger of 100% logic.
Because it will be consistent. It'll be
Exactly,
consistent in its own. Woo-hoo.
But you start with fallacies and it just goes in weird places.
It does. All right, Gary, take us away.
Okay, letter 230 from a letter to Rona Bear, answering various questions about the Lord of the Rings. With regard to Aragorn's boast, I think he was reckoning his ancestry through the paternal line for this purpose. But in any case, I imagine that Númenóreans, before their knowledge dwindled, knew more about heredity than other people. To this, of course, they refer by the common symbol of blood. They recognize the fact that in spite of intermarriages, some characteristics would appear in pure form in later generations. Aragorn's own longevity was a case in point. Gandalf, I think, refers to the curious fact that even in a much less well-preserved house of the stewards of Denethor, had come out as almost purely Númenórean. Okay. Volume 2, page 70. Treebeard was not using English sounds on this occasion, but using ancient Elvish words mixed up and run together in Entish fashion. The elements are Lore gold, not the metal but the color, what we should call golden light. Endor, nor, land, country, lin, a musical sound, melina, yellow, orn, tree, lore, dream, nan, valley. So that roughly he means the valley where the trees and the golden light sing musically, a land of music and dreams. There are yellow trees there. It is a tree yellow land. The same applies to the last line on that page, where the elements are Torre, force, Tumba, deep valley, More, darkness, Lome, night. May Govanen means well met. Treebird's greeting to Celeborn and Gladriel meant, O beautiful ones, parents of beautiful children. The Song of Praise in Volume 3, page 231, is not really a song, but is represented by a few phrases taken from the language bird in which English represents the common speech. The second, fourth, and sixth lines are Sindarin, or Gray Elvish. The seventh and ninth are High Elvish. Line 2 means, may the halflings live long, glory to the halflings. The fourth line means, Frodo and Sam, princes of the west, glorify them. The sixth, glorify them. The seventh line means, bless them, long we will praise them. The ninth line means, the ring bearers, bless or praise them to the height. Okay, without knowing what he was.
Yeah, I've got those. So in the if we look back at the footnotes, or the endnotes rather, the first one was when Aragorn says, I am of the race of the West, unmingled. Second quote was, this is, I think, Treebeard. Lora Lindoranan, Linde Lorendor, Melanorelion, or Nemalin. And then Torelilomea, Tumbaletorea, Lomeanor. You were reading more of the.
Yeah, so footnote 4 says, from Lord Findle's reading to her. Ein Bedui Dunadan, I Govanet. Footnote 5 says, Anima Vanimalian Nostadi. Footnote 6 says, the following lines are translated by Tolkien in line 2. Quio Ferenane Anna, Aglarni Ferian. Line 4. Dar Aberhail Conan and Anu. Eglario. Line 6. Eglario. Line 7. I Laite, Andave, Laite, Volumet. Colindor or Laita Tarien.
Yep, lots of Elvish.
Yeah.
I guess part of it's because this is when the Return of the King has the Return of the King been published yet?
Yes.
Okay, so the appendices are there. Well, are they though? Because I thought he's been quibbling with his.
Were the appendices even published in the first edition of Return of the King?
Oh.
They come late.
They weren't. Question, Anthony. I'm just thinking that there's a lot that people don't know yet because they don't know the translations of all the Elvish, right?
Yeah, of course.
And over the years, I remember when I was just a young lad, there was, in the Silmarillion copy that I had, it had a little glossary of Elvish words in their English meanings. And so, and I think that was the first edition, actually, of the Silmarillion, from 1978, or soon afterwards, maybe the 1980s. But it was, people back then just did not have, Good. Yes. The life of a dog owner. Cry havoc. What was it Shakespeare says? Let loose all dogs of war.
Very lonely.
Also, Gary, what kind of dog do you have?
It is a mixture of a bunch of different types. We know for a fact, because my wife sent off for the DNA, it's Mastiff, Shar-Pei, English Springer Spaniel. I forget what the rest are. It's very friendly, except it's a great watchdog because it barks like it wants to tear your throat out. So,
Yeah.
but then you know it comes up to you and wants to get petted.
Yeah, and these are just cuddle dogs, and they're standard poodles, but their bark is deep. And so when somebody's at the door in the night, it sounds like two really big dogs. Even though they'll just lick you to death.
Fear us. Beware the tongues.
Love and play and food.
If Ron was a big tongue.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's all we had today. We were just talking, Hawk, about how in letter 230, Tolkien's giving all these translations of the Elvish snippets throughout the books. Well, in 1961, there really wasn't a list of, and we were trying to figure out, had The Return of the King been published already in 1961?
Yes.
But were the appendices part of the first edition? Because that's that whole discussion he's having with Alan and Ellen, right? He's saying, well, I think they should be, they ought to
But it
be.
took them a long time to finish them.
Yeah.
So, you don't have the appendices.
Right.
You've got the 3 books, and that's it.
Yeah. And no idea what it means.
No idea what it means.
Pronunciation or anything.
So the poor guy, all his devoted readers are like, what does this mean? What does this
How do
mean?
you say it?
Yeah, pronunciation.
Yeah, the pronunciation alone is really necessary.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's fun to speak Elvish, but
You gotta know how.
But realize it was such a radical thing for a fantasy book to have an appendices, like just the concept of it.
Yeah.
Just like every publisher, like, what? This is fantasy. Why would you need an appendices of the fonts and the translation and the history? Like, it's fantasy. It's not real. Why would you need all that? This isn't a dissertation.
That what you just said, it's not real, reminded me of the Never-Ending Story when Sebastian's reading the book.
Yes.
And it's about him.
Yes.
A little boy reading a book.
Yes.
He's like, that can't be. It's not true. It's just real.
He said.
He said.
Well, that's just before we wrap up. So, these are both of us from the same publisher, but the Labyrinth role-playing game, just 2d6, right? And that's and you have 13 hours to save the baby by going through the labyrinth, and it's different every time you play, because it randomly, as the labyrinth does, panels change every time you come to a new section. So every time you play the exact same adventure several times and run into very different experiences. 2d6, that's it. But where a book is an adventure, is a book like in the feedback loop. Anyway, it's very fun.
How accessible it was. I know you've always been searching for a role-playing system that is intuitive and a person can just pick up and go.
So, for the players, it is. For the GM, you need to be an experienced GM who can improvise and fill in the blanks on the fly. So it actually requires a very advanced GM background. The system's simple. But your skill as a game master actually needs to be quite high. Much higher than me and the others, which are much more structured, you can just read verbatim. This sets up the scene, and then you have to be able to fill in the blanks from a couple of dice rolls. So your skill as a GM is really pushed, especially in filling in the blanks in a consistent improvisational way, because it's not open-ended improv, it's structured improv, which is harder than open-ended improv in that respect, because you have to keep the internal consistency. But it's auto-generated, so you can't memorize a way to play. You could just like run it through and keep it the same if you want. You could not auto-generate.
like auto-generate once and then run it the same way every time you want. But if you're truly going to run it the way it's meant to be, you as the GM don't know what you're getting into with each turn of the page of the players go, we go this way. All right, let's find out what's going to happen. And it says, okay, roll, and it'll be this or this or this or this. And you got like 12 different things each choice to be, which is like choose your own adventure branching. Except that then in the context, it then branches even more because you have to roll to generate for that very quickly on the fly. There is no pre-generated option. So your skills as GM must be well honed for improvisation. But for the players, it's super simple. So for the players, it's super accessible. And it's a lot of fun. Because it's got the known characters and everything. And you definitely got to go watch the movie first to get in, because all the characters are there. And you have to be able to get into those characters and everything, you know. But the players don't. So if you have enough GM experience to improvise, well worth it. 2d6, super simple, lots of fun, and you can play it more than once. Whereas a lot of games, once you play the adventure, you play the adventure. Right? Anyway, total tangent.
Yeah, thank you. I'll add another tangent.
Yeah.
Gary, did you happen to be up in the night and see the Northern Lights by you? Because I've been hearing everybody I know saying that it was great here.
No, I've seen some feedback from the area here, and I guess it was, they saw them, but
Go out.
I still remember when I was about 10 years old in January in Wisconsin, being called out of the house, my brother and I, by our parents. And they said, look, and we looked up towards Camel's Hill, which was in the north. And half the sky was just pulsating green. It was unbelievable. And that lasted me forever. And I don't know if that kind of ruined me for watching Northern Lights in the future, but
Later,
I'm doing last night because I was fast asleep. I was tired.
Yeah.
Me too.
Late 80s, I was in Utah, and I was up late talking to a female friend, and the sky started, it was like 3 in the morning or something. The sky started to get lighter, and it was more of an amber color that far south, but it was clear out in Utah. That it was in the late 80s. And it lasted, and it was just rippling and falling.
There was a guy in Georgia
Very cool.
who
Wow.
was writing about seeing the Northern Lights last night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's because we're
I
having
thought they
major
saw it as
sunstorms.
far south as the Bahamas.
Yeah, major sunstorm spots right now, major solar sunspots.
Yeah.
And the sunspots in the 70s, it's up in that area. So that means your cell phone and wireless and stuff all is going to be acting up too. So I used to run a wireless ISP, and I was always watching the NOAA solar weather. So the coronal mass ejections that are going on.
Anyway, CME.
Yep. Thank goodness we have our magnetism and atmosphere saving us from that bombardment right now.
Otherwise, our atmosphere would be gone.
And we would be not doing well.
Toast. We were toast.
All right. Well, thank you all so very much. I'm so glad we were able to make it. I'm so glad we were able to save the place. Please donate to RPG Research so we can keep the center open. rpgresearch.com/donate. Another group may be starting here next week, Wednesday. This is the community center. I'm trying to get other things. So the Spokane Linux user group, they used to meet at Sherry's for years out in the valley. Apparently, it's went out of business. So they've been scrambling to try to find a new place, and they're like, "Come on down, we'll donate or something, but come on down." So Wednesday, 7 p.m. If anybody's interested in Linux and open source tech and stuff like that, that's the third Wednesday of each month that they'll be here, and we'll be doing that. It's called Slug, Spokane Linux User Group. Slug. Will, my oldest son, when he was 11, was their youngest president back in whatever that was, 2007 or whatever it was. They unanimously elected him president back then because he was so into tech at the time. And it was very interesting. So he got to shape it for a year. It was very interesting. But yeah, if you have any interest in just technology, open source, that kind of stuff, you're welcome. That's the third Wednesday. So, trying to use this community center, see if we can get people to use it to donate. Please, as you're leaving out, if you wouldn't mind leaving a donation, there's a thing right by the door. Every little bit helps. You know, we were able to get the water bottles resupplied because we ran out of those because we ran out of money. And so everything you can do, that would help. So we'll be back here the second Saturday at 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here. Same bat channel, same bat place, same bat time. And quick question, Brian, is this like too close to you for something else you're doing? Do we need to move this an hour later? Because I know you've been scrambling to get here.
No, it's just
life.
Anthony and I. So we've been trying to do like once a month a Tolkien One Ring role playing thing. But I'm trying. Last time I finished a little after 12. Today I finished it at 12.
Okay.
I mean, I could just move here and then it'd be easy to
You're
come.
welcome to.
But I didn't know if you're I'm not sure. Last time we had a our Tolkien Society May. I think John was running something downstairs.
Yeah, but I mean,
So if we schedule it, maybe.
yeah, as long as you schedule it.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd much rather have your group here than.
Yep.
Oh, really?
Okay.
But, but yeah, I would love to have your group here.
Yeah, that'd be
I just
cool.
need to know in advance. That's
Yeah. No, it's just me getting
We have
lunch.
a ton of maps and props and everything that you can use, so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's explore that.
Cool. And you can do it down there, you can do it up here, whatever you want.
My wife will probably be happy with that too, because then it's out of our home and here.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it'd be on Saturdays?
It would be.
So that means I can potentially.
Yeah. We've been running it from 9 to 12, keeping it
That would
tight,
be,
tight 3 hours.
yeah, that would be great, because we have Spark Central from 1 to 3 on the
Yeah.
first and third Saturdays normally.
Right.
But the others are running that, so.
Yeah, we could try to plan ahead to the second. If we did it the
That'd be nice.
Saturday.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
That'd be-
Okay.
That'd be great.
Yeah, we're working through the Moria module, which I've been using the alpha PDF, but we don't have the hardback copy yet.
Yeah, use what you got.
So use what you got.
Although, you know, I have a bunch of other Moria from Murph and Decipher and Chris Siemens Decipher one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
They've got some really cool things, atmospheric stuff that they have.
Oh, yeah.
I was bringing some of that today, as you have seen the feel of Moria a little bit more.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so very much. Wherever it may be well.
And nobody.
Bye, Gary.
Good seeing you.
My house.
Take care, guys.
See ya.
I love your puppies.
Let's see the mouse.
Okay, so the black one is Mort, gray one is Radar.
Let's see here. I thought.
Oh,
there it is.
40.
knocked everything down.
Well, Joe, you hungry?
Yeah, I good cake.